most powerful response you can offer someone who once took you for granted isn't anger. It isn't confrontation. It isn't even getting even. It's distance, complete, intentional, and lasting. No explanation, no warning, no trace. You simply step out of their world, and what happens next inside their mind is something they may never admit to you. Something that lingers during quiet moments. Something that resurfaces every time they meet someone who walks like you, laughs like you, or reminds them of the connection they once overlooked. Robert Greene understood something that most people spend their entire lives avoiding. He knew that influence isn't about what you say, it's about what you choose to withhold. It isn't about constant presence, it's about intentional absence. And the person who can walk away without looking back often shapes the entire emotional dynamic without saying another word. This video will explore the 7 psychological stages that can unfold inside someone's mind when you simply step away. Not when you argue, not when you seek attention, not when you demand appreciation, but when you quietly move on. And by the end, you'll understand why the most impactful thing you can do when someone underestimates your value is to become a memory they can't easily forget. But here's what I won't reveal just yet. The 7th stage, the final one, is something so unexpected and so rarely discussed that most people never see it coming. It's the moment they realize something about themselves that changes the way they see their own behavior. We'll get there. But first you need to understand the structure of this psychological process. 1. The shock of non-existence. When you step away, the first thing they feel isn't sadness. It isn't regret. It's disorientation. You've disrupted the pattern of their reality. See, people don't always recognize your value when you're present. They become attached to the consistency of your presence, the reliability of your attention, and the predictability of your emotional availability. You became a fixed part of their routine, and fixed parts are rarely appreciated. They're expected. When you leave, you don't just remove yourself, you remove a piece of their emotional framework. Their mind was operating on certain assumptions that you would always respond, always be reachable, always absorb their chaos without consequence. And suddenly, that system no longer works the way it once did. Robert Greene observed throughout his work that people often overlook what is constantly available. Familiarity creates complacency, and complacency creates the illusion that access is permanent. But the moment access disappears, perception changes instantly. The person who once overlooked your value is forced to confront your absence. They assumed you would always be there because you always were, and now you're not. This is not grief, not yet. This is something more instinctive. This is the confusion of someone who walks into a familiar space expecting everything to be where it has always been, only to realize something essential is missing. They keep reaching for you out of habit. They check their phone. They open your chat. They expect you to text at any moment, but you don't. And the silence begins to settle in a way they cannot ignore. The shock doesn't arrive dramatically. It unfolds quietly. It settles into small moments. The empty seat, the unanswered message, the name that no longer appears. They don't fully understand what's happening yet. They only feel that something important is missing, something foundational, and that something is you. Let them experience it. Let your absence speak before you ever say another word. 2. The interrogation within. Once the initial shock settles, the questions begin. And these questions don't arrive gently. They appear at 2 a.m. when the world is quiet and distractions have faded. They surface in the middle of conversations when someone mentions your name and their thoughts suddenly shift. They arrive without warning, without structure, and without easy answers. What happened? Did I do something? Why won't they respond? Are they okay? Are they spending time with someone else? Did they ever really care about me? This is the stage where their mind becomes a courtroom, and they're both the one asking the questions and the one trying to answer them. They replay every conversation, every overlooked moment, every time they dismissed your feelings, every time they chose convenience over connection. And here's the difficult truth they may never admit. They weren't prepared for you to have limits. You were expected to be endless, dependable, a source of patience they could return to whenever they needed support. But even the deepest wells run dry when no one takes care of them. And now they're staring at the empty space, wondering when it happened, how it happened, and why they didn't notice sooner. This inner questioning becomes relentless because it offers no clear resolution. There's no final answer, no certainty, no closure, just an endless cycle of what-ifs repeating in the background of their thoughts. Robert Greene often emphasizes that people rarely examine their own behavior when they believe they hold the advantage. But the moment that sense of security disappears, certainty disappears with it. The person who once felt confident in your loyalty begins to wonder whether they truly valued it in the first place. This is what's happening beneath the surface. Not consciously, not openly, but deep within. The questioning has already begun, and it won't stop until it finds an explanation. And the possibility they're slowly beginning to consider is that the answer may lie within themselves. 3. The hunger for resolution. Human beings cannot tolerate incomplete loops. This is a psychological law more powerful than almost any other. When a story starts, the mind demands an ending. When a question is asked, the brain hungers for an answer. And when someone who is central to your emotional architecture simply disappears, without explanation, the mind goes into overdrive trying to close the gap. This is the third stage, hunger. They begin reaching not for you, not directly, but for any piece of information that might explain your silence. They scroll through your social media looking for clues. They analyze your last message looking for coded meanings. They ask mutual friends casually, carefully trying not to seem too interested if they've heard from you. And here's where the power shifts, because every unanswered question is a hook in their mind. Every mystery about your absence becomes an obsession they cannot shake. And the less you give them, the deeper the hooks sink. Robert Greene teaches that mystery amplifies perceived value, and that what remains inaccessible often becomes irresistible. But what happens when someone is desperate for closure and the only response they receive is silence? They spiral, they obsess, they hand over power without realizing they're doing it. They need resolution, they crave it like oxygen, but you're offering none. And that absence of resolution creates a psychological pressure that builds and builds, with no release valve. The hunger isn't romantic. It isn't always about wanting you back. Sometimes it's simply the brain's desperation to complete a story, to understand, to close the file and move on. But you've denied them that mercy, and in that denial, you've taken up permanent residence in their mind. Some people think giving closure is kindness. It isn't. Closure is permission to forget. When you offer no closure, you become unforgettable. Not because you're special, but because the loop never closes. You become an open wound they cannot stop touching. 4. The myth-making. When people cannot access the truth, they create one. This is the fourth stage, and it's perhaps the most fascinating because it reveals just how fragile the human ego really is. When faced with the unexplained absence of someone they undervalued, the mind begins constructing narratives, not to understand you, but to protect themselves. They start telling themselves stories. Maybe they were always like this, distant, unpredictable. Maybe they never really cared about me as much as I thought. Maybe they're doing this for attention. Maybe they found someone else. Maybe they'll be back soon asking for another chance. These stories serve a function. They rewrite history in a way that preserves self-image, because the alternative, admitting that they pushed away someone valuable through neglect, disrespect, or entitlement, is too painful to accept. And so the myth-making begins. But here's what they don't realize. Myths are unstable. They require constant maintenance. Every time reality contradicts the narrative, the myth must be reinforced, revised, restructured, and that takes energy, mental bandwidth, emotional effort. You've become a constant presence in their thoughts without doing anything at all. Robert Greene explains that perception fills the spaces where information is missing. When people cannot access the truth directly, they create stories that protect their ego and preserve their sense of control. And when you remove yourself from view, when you become invisible, they can neither confirm nor deny what they believe. They're left grasping at possibilities, constructing explanations from thin air, telling stories about someone who is no longer there. The irony is sharp. The less you engage, the more they must work to maintain the illusion. Their peace becomes dependent on a story, and stories eventually collapse under the weight of reality. They'll defend the myth publicly. They'll tell friends they're glad you're gone, that it was for the best that they never needed you anyway. But late at night, when no one's watching, the myth weakens, and beneath it, the truth begins to surface. You mattered more than they admitted, and now you're gone. 5. The phantom presence. There is a phenomenon that psychologists call intrusive recall. It's when the mind involuntarily brings back memories of someone despite, or perhaps because of, the conscious desire to forget them. This is the 5th stage, the stage where you become everywhere and nowhere. They see you in strangers, in familiar places, in the corner of their eye. They hear your voice in quiet rooms. They feel your absence in crowded ones. You've become a phantom, lingering not in their physical space, but in their mental landscape. And the hardest part? This stage often arrives after they thought they were over you. They moved through the shock. They endured the interrogation. They wrestled with the hunger and built their myths. And then, just when they thought they'd moved on, your memory returns. It comes without warning. A scent, a phrase, a place you once visited together. And suddenly the myth cracks and reality floods back. You were real. You were there. And now you're not. Robert Greene often writes about the power of timing, the influence of strategic withdrawal, and the psychological impact of absence. What he understood is that withdrawal creates a vacuum, and vacuums demand to be filled. When you leave, something must take your place. But what if nothing can? What if they try to fill the space with distractions, relationships, noise, and still feel the hollow echo of your absence? That echo becomes your voice. The phantom presence is particularly difficult because it's uncontrollable. They cannot choose when you appear in their thoughts. They cannot schedule your return to their mind. You arrive when you arrive, and they are powerless to stop it. This is the moment when they realize that forgetting you isn't a choice. It's a struggle, and it's a struggle they're losing. You're not there, but you're everywhere. And that contradiction will divide their peace in two. 6. The revaluation crisis. Every person operates on an internal economy, an unconscious ledger that tracks value. Who matters? Who doesn't? Who deserves attention? Who can be ignored? When you are present, you become familiar currency. Abundant, easily accessible, always there. But now that you're gone, the market corrects. This is the 6th stage, the stage where they finally see what they had, not through appreciation but through loss. The value they assigned you was wrong. The ledger was flawed. And now, in your absence, they are forced to reassess everything. This is painful because it requires something the ego resists at all costs. Admitting they misjudged you. They didn't just lose you, they underestimated you. They took you for granted, not because you lacked value, but because they lacked the perspective to see it. And that realization doesn't arrive gently. It arrives with clarity, cutting through the stories they built and exposing the truth beneath. You were worth more, and they treated you as though you weren't. Robert Greene repeatedly demonstrates that people often fail to recognize true value until scarcity transforms perception. What is always available is overlooked. What becomes inaccessible gains significance. And by the time someone realizes what they've lost, the opportunity to reclaim it is often gone. By the time the revaluation happens, the opportunity has passed. You've stepped away. Your presence is no longer available. They can see your value now, clearly, painfully, undeniably, but they cannot return to the way things were. This is the stage where regret begins to settle into something heavier, where the occasional sting becomes a lasting ache. Because it's one thing to lose someone valuable. It's another thing to realize you let them go. And they did. Not with malice, not with intention, but with neglect, which is sometimes even harder to accept. Because neglect is slow. Neglect is subtle. Neglect causes distance without anyone noticing until it's too late. Now they understand. But understanding changes nothing, because you're already gone. 7. The mirror that doesn't lie. This is the stage I told you we'd reach. The one they don't see coming. The one that changes them deeply. After the shock, after the interrogation, after the hunger and the myths and the phantom and the revaluation, after all of it, there comes a moment of stillness. A moment where the noise stops and they're left alone with the only thing. They cannot escape themselves. This is the stage where they stop asking what happened to you and start asking, what's wrong with me? Why do I keep losing people? Why do people leave me? What is it about me that makes people walk away? This is the stage where your absence becomes a mirror, and the reflection isn't easy to face. Robert Greene's work consistently reveals that people who avoid self-awareness eventually become trapped by their own patterns. Those who refuse to examine their behavior often repeat the same mistakes until loss forces them into a difficult conversation with themselves. A person who avoids accountability for too long eventually finds themselves alone, surrounded by the remains of relationships they believed they controlled. Your departure forces them to confront a truth they've been avoiding, perhaps their entire lives. That they may be the common factor in their own losses, that their behavior, their patterns, their sense of entitlement have created a world where people eventually leave, and you are simply the latest, or maybe you were the one who mattered most. This mirror stage is not transformation, not necessarily. Many people look into the mirror and look away. They return to old stories. They find new people to overlook. They repeat the cycle because change requires courage, and courage requires discomfort. But some stare into the mirror longer than comfort allows, and in that moment, they begin to shift, not into pieces, but into possibilities. Possibilities through which perhaps a new version of themselves might emerge. You won't be there to witness it. You've already moved on. But somewhere in some quiet corner of their mind, your absence will remain like a lasting reminder, proof that they once had something valuable and let it slip away because they were too unaware to hold it close. There is a particular kind of influence that requires no words, no confrontation, no dramatic exit speech, no final message filled with anger or weighed down by pain. It's the power of absence, pure, intentional, and lasting. When you step away without explanation, you leave behind something far more powerful than words. You leave behind questions that may never be answered. You leave behind a space that cannot easily be filled. You leave behind a version of yourself that exists entirely in their imagination, untouched by arguments, unchanged by pleading. You become unforgettable, and unforgettable people, by their nature, do not explain themselves. Robert Greene's philosophy rests on a central principle. The one who shapes perception shapes reality. And by stepping away, you've done something remarkable. You've given up control over perception while simultaneously influencing their internal reality. They will create their own version of you in your absence. They will elevate you. They will see reminders of you everywhere. They will wonder for years what could have been, what went wrong, what they missed. And you will be free. Free from the exhausting effort of proving your worth to those who refuse to recognize it. Free from explaining your needs to those who dismiss them. Free from waiting for change that was never coming. Your silence becomes a question they must answer on their own. Perhaps you're watching this because someone in your life has pushed you to your limit. Someone who sees you every day but hasn't truly noticed you in months. Someone who responds with half attention. Who shows up only when convenient. Who treats your presence like furniture. Useful, yes, but unremarkable. You've wondered if it's worth it. If you should say something, if you should fight for recognition. But consider this. The struggle is a trap. Confrontation, in many cases, gives them exactly what they want. A chance to dismiss your concerns, to explain away their neglect, to convince you to stay through empty promises. But stepping away offers no such opportunity. It's final. It's clear. It's a complete removal of your emotional effort from their world. And the space you leave behind will speak louder than any argument you could ever make. Robert Greene did not teach aggression. He taught strategy. And strategy sometimes means knowing when to leave the board entirely. But this isn't just about them. It's about you. When you step away from someone who undervalued you, something shifts inside you. A door closes that needed closing. A chapter ends that had lasted too long. And in that ending you find something unexpected. Strength. Not strength over them, though they may feel your absence, but strength within yourself. Strength over your decisions, your energy, your attention. You reclaim ownership of your own emotional economy. You stop investing in what no longer grows. The first few days might sting. The silence might feel foreign, even wrong. You might second-guess yourself. Wonder if you were too harsh. If they'll change. If you should reach out. Don't. Let the silence do its work. Let the void expand. Let them feel the full weight of what they took for granted. And meanwhile you rebuild. You invest in yourself. You discover who you are, without the constant drain of someone who never saw you clearly. This is not cruelty. This is correction. You are not punishing them. You are protecting yourself. And sometimes the same action serves both purposes. They will never admit what your absence did to them. Their pride won't allow it. Their narrative requires them to move on, to pretend they're fine, to tell mutual friends they don't care. But you'll know. You'll know because you understand the 7 stages now. You understand what happens when someone who was always there suddenly isn't. You understand the architecture of psychological collapse that follows. And you'll know because eventually, in some form or another, they'll reach out. Maybe weeks later, maybe months, maybe years. A message, a call, a comment, an indirect signal that they've been thinking about you. When that happens, you'll have a choice. Let them back in and risk repeating the cycle, or remain silent and let the legend endure. I cannot tell you which to choose. Only you know what you need, what you deserve, what you're willing to accept. But I can tell you this, the person who can walk away and stay away holds all the power. Not because they're cold, not because they don't feel, but because they've learned the hardest lesson anyone can learn. You cannot force someone to value you, but you can remove yourself from those who don't. And in that removal, you discover something they never will, your own worth. If you're still here, you're not like the others. Most left when the video got uncomfortable. You stayed, you listened, you understood. Subscribe if you haven't.